How do you detect when the market, has crossed a support resistance, level, whether that's a fixed price level, right? Or this could be an indicator such as a moving average, or maybe like a pivots indicator, right? Or maybe this is a proprietary calculated, support resistance level. Right, so that part there is variable, and I'll explain how you would input those different types of levels, whether it's an indicator or a price value that you have calculated for yourself. So we have a crossover of this SR level, right? Some kind of move away, and then you have a pullback, and then a bounce off of that level there. All right, so that's what we'll cover for our first question today. So I have a 200 period moving average here that I'm going to use as my support level there. And so we actually have a great little example here to work with, right? So we can see we have price crossed up, and then we get a nice little pullback and a bounce off of that. So let's get BloodHound open, and we'll start going to work here. So basically this pattern here has several elements, right? So several components, right? So the first one is price needs to cross over whatever our SR level is. First thing is a crossover, right? Let's detect all of these market crossovers there. And so that one will be pretty straightforward, and just grab a crossover solver. Right, it's connected in. And here, right, so we'll identify when the closing price crosses over, and in this case it's going to be the SMA 200. Right. So input A is going to be the closing price, right? So input A, we're going to switch that over to price, right? And there we go. We can see the closing price of the bar is already selected by default there. And let me stretch this down a little bit there. All right, so input A is the closing price. Now input B, that will be our SMA 200, right? Or whatever your support resistance level, is going to be there. So I'm going to open up the indicator here and just put in a 200 period like so. All right. So now if you're using some kind of proprietarily calculated price level there, then for input B, we can change this to a fixed value, right? And so we could put in, let's see here, what should we put in? All right, I'll put in 62.66, like so. And there we go, right? So there's price crossing over that 62.66 price level. Let's see, where is it? There we go. Somewhere like that, right? So the point is, right, input B is where you plug in whatever your support resistance level is coming from, right? So whether it's an indicator or your own calculated value there. So I'm going to switch this back to the indicator, and there's our SMA 200. All right, so that is component number one, right? And then component number two is, right, usually, I would think that most people are going to want some kind of clean, movement away, before the pullback. So, right, so we can add this to it, and, doing something like that would, let's see here. Yeah, so, I guess this is a good example, right? We can see here that price is basically hugging the SMA 200, right? It's just kind of consolidating around it, right? So, and typically this is not going to produce good results there, right? Good clear signals there, right? So so for the most part, I think it's fair to say most people don't want to generate signals, right, when this happens. You want this nice clean pull away of price before it pulls back and bounces off there, right? Let's see here. I think there was another good example back here somewhere. Yes, something like this. Even though this kind of worked out, you got to ask yourself, is that really, that same pattern there? Yes or no. So, this is all, subjective stuff here that you'll have to kind of figure out here. So for today, I am going to implement a minimum clearance here. That price needs to move away from our support resistance level here, for it to be considered, a part of this pattern, right, before it pulls back to that bounce there. All right. So to do that, we're going to use a comparison solver. Let's see here. And we'll have to figure out like how many points of clearance do we need here. So we'll get back to this in a moment here, right? So I want to kind of figure out, right? You'll need to figure out like what is this minimum distance here that you need? Like is this acceptable, right? For that pattern, in which case obviously it has a much shorter distance, or do you want something like a much greater price pullback there? So all right, so let's begin to kind of set up this comparison solver here. So input A is going to be price, and let's see here, and in this case, you got to ask yourself, well, do you want to, for checking this clearance here, do you want to look at the low price of the bar? Do you want to look at the open of the bar? Or maybe even the close of the bar, right? The close of the bar is on the other side of the bar there, right? So yeah, you got to figure out exactly what price point of that bar you want to use here. And actually, I'm going to use something here a little unique here. I'm going to use the body bottom. So that body bottom price here. And let's kind of zoom in a little bit here, right? So as the bars are moving up, right, with up bars, right, the open price is going to be the body bottom. And when it's a down bar, well, the closing price is going to be the body bottom, right? So it doesn't matter what direction the bar is, whichever price is at the bottom of the body, right, becomes, that's the price that's used here. So I will use that for both of these. And there we go, body bottom and body bottom. All right, and then input B is, well, I guess I'll put this in the name here, SMA 200. So let's open this up, and all I have to do is just change my period like so. There we go. And again, if you're not using an indicator, right, input B, we can switch this over to a fixed value, and then you can put in, that proprietary calculated price level there that you want to use for your support resistance there, right? So, all right, but I'm going to put this back to indicator value. There we go, SMA 200. All right. Okay, so now we need to kind of figure out how many points of clearance do we want here. And so we need to go into the comparison rules next. And let's see here. All right, so what we have on the chart is going to be, right, a long signal, right? This is a long bounce here. So let's see here. So the body bottom is going to be above our SR level, right? Our support resistance level. So the body bottom is going to be greater than, and just, just to be clear, or just to be cautious here, or inclusive, I will use the equal symbol there, right? So we want the body bottom greater than or equal to the SMA, plus we're going to take the SMA and add some kind of number of points here and figure out what that clearance needs to be there. So let's see, we're at roughly 66. What are we getting up to here? 70. So let's say 3 points. Hopefully that's good enough. And so the opposite for a short, right? So if it's a short, right, price, the body top, so this time the body top needs to be below our support resistance level, right? So actually I'm going to switch this over to the body top here. So body top, but this we're going to also go less than or equal to the SMA minus, and I'll just put in 3 points there as well. And so for shorts, let me switch this over here. We're going to use the body top, right? Yeah, so for these short bounces here, we'll use the top of the body, measure from the top of the body to our SR level there. All right. And actually, there we go. So we have our output, right? So we can see whenever price makes that clearance. So, right, we're going to get a long output whenever the body bottom is more than 3 points away from our SMA, or if the body top is below our SMA. And there we go. So that's condition number 2. And let's go back to our screenshot here. All right, so then the next step is price needs to pull back to our SR level, right? And it needs to pull back to within some price range, right? So we need this to be, the bars, need to be in some kind of proximity to our support resistance level. And again, this is all very subjective, so you'll have to kind of play around with these values here to see what you like there. But that is step number 3, is making sure that price did pull back to our support resistance level there. All right. So this here, let me center this. There we go. Right. So we have one comparison solver checking our separation. And so next, I'm actually going to copy this and paste it. And let's see here. And also, let me put in the name there. There we go, 3 points. Right. That's what we used. And so for this next one here, we're not checking for clearance. Let's see here. We're checking for proximity. There. I'm just going to abbreviate that. So, and probably, let's just go for, say, I don't know, two ticks. Yeah, 2 ticks of proximity there to the SMA 200. I'll go with that for now. All right, let's connect this solver in here, there. And let's see here. So we need to, first thing is, we need to figure out, okay, what price are we using here? So this time, if it's a long signal, let's go with the low price of the bar. So I will switch this over to the low price of the bar. So for a long, all right, so for a long bounce, we'll check the low price of the bar. And if it's a short bounce, right, it will be the high price of the bar, right? So for this, right, these prices are all going to be opposite of each other, right? If we look at our clearance solver here, right, body bottom, body top, right, these are opposite values there, opposite prices. So let's see here. Yeah, so low and high. And then next, we'll go into the rules window here and reconfigure this to be, we're going to use the equals condition now. Right? So we want the low price of the bar, or we're going to check to see if the low price of the bar is equal to our SMA 200 within, some kind of range here. So let's switch this over to ticks now. And I said we'll go with 2 ticks for now and see how that works out. So let's switch all these over to 2 ticks, right? So the equal creates a range, within 2 ticks of the SMA, right? So that means the low price could be 2 ticks above or 2 ticks below the SMA, right? So as long as it's, within that range there. And actually, there we go. So we actually have a bunch of bars here, right, that meet that criteria there. Now, hopefully y'all recognize that maybe the low price doesn't necessarily, that may not necessarily happen. Like right here. Here's a good example. This actually isn't a good bounce, but you can see that, right? Maybe sometimes you get a wick that just punches right through. And so our low price is way outside that 2 tick range. So we need to check other bar prices and see if other bar prices gets within, range of your support resistance level. So let's actually kind of rename this here and narrow it down. So for this one, we're using the low price, right, for these long bounces and the high price for short bounces. So we'll rename that, and then we're going to copy it and paste it there. And this time, we'll look at the body, right? We'll use that body price type again here, right? So, so we can see here, right, the bar open and the bar close gets within that range there. So let's go back and use the body bottom. So for a long bounce, we'll look at the body bottom there, like so, and switch this over to the body top, like so. And obviously we can see, we have a bunch of body bottoms that are looks like it's within a tick, right, of the SMA. So there you go. So that's one price here to take a look at. Let's go. This is actually a great example here to kind of work with as to, what you might encounter one of these times here. So what about the middle of the bar, right? The median price of that. Maybe all these bars might have all punched through, right? So the lower wick and the body bottom all were outside of this 2 tick range, right? They were all below it. But the middle of the body, right, would have been within that 2 tick range. Let's see if I can find an example here. We're in the overnight session here, so we'll just have to use our imagination here. But say for example, maybe all of these bars were really long, right? So price basically bounced up and down, and these bars were much, much longer, right? So the tops of the bars, right, the high price and the body tops would have been way up above, outside that 2-tick range. But the middle of the bar, right, the middle price or the median price would have been within that 2-tick range, right? So you gotta account for all the variability here that the market can throw at you. So let me kind of go back to where we were there. All right. So for this one here, for this one, let's see here. Is it the median? Yeah, it is the median. Okay. So we're going to switch these both to the median. And there we go. Median. Like that. So for now, actually, let's put that one back. And oh shoot, I didn't make my copy yet. Okay, let's undo here. Oh, it doesn't actually undo. Okay, it doesn't actually undo that. Let's see. Oh, actually it does. There we go. All right. So this is, back to saying the body. And there we go. Body, bottom, body, top. Okay, so let me make a copy of this and paste it. All right, this time, so this new one, we're going to switch it over to the median. All right, so we have 3 solvers here with the various, different prices here of each of the bars, right, that might go in to that 2-tick range there, right? So any of these prices might do. And so next we need to combine all these together with an OR node, like so, right? Because it doesn't matter which price, gets within that 2-tick range. If either or any of these can work here. So, all right, so we're going to connect all those together like so. And now we're ready for the next step here. Yep. All right, so we have component number 1, right, our crossover. Component number 2 is having that minimum clearance here. Component number 3 is price pulling back to within a certain range there of our level there, and again, 2 ticks is subjective there, right? That obviously works, on a minute chart here. So again, all these values, you'll have to kind of custom tailor them to match whatever the instrument you're dealing with, the time frame, and your own decisions as to how closely does price need to pull back to your support resistance level there as well, right? So component number 4 is price needs to bounce away, right? So price needs to kind of move away there. So, let's see here. So that is, that part's subjective as well. So the easiest answer, the easiest way to identify if price is bouncing away is an inflection solver. get this named here. All right. So we can just check to see if the closing price of the bar reverses directions. And yeah, so going back to our really simple example here, right? Price, kind of vaguely, you have to use your imagination here, but price kind of moves up, right? And then reverses down. So here's our short signal for that price reversing down, right? And so if you do get a bounce, obviously, you're going to have down bars and then you're going to have an up bar. All right, so we can see there's a bunch of long outputs here whenever the bar, it's not really the bar reversing direction, but it's the closing price reversing direction, right? So the closing price goes from here, it goes down, and then the closing price reverses up right there, right? So so we get a bunch of those. So that's the simple answer, all right? But of course, as we can see, right, price quite often kind of consolidates around, when price bounces off, right, we can get a bunch of those closing price reversals there. So if you want something a little more substantive to actually confirm that price did move away, what we can do is we can say, okay, you know what? I actually want to see a couple of up bars. Let's wait for at least 2, maybe 3 up bars, to actually confirm that price did actually move away, and that price did clearly bounce away. Okay. So if we wanted to do that as well, let's see here. Let's grab a bar direction, and let's say we need at least 2 bars in a row, right? So if we connect this in, we kind of zoom in there, right? So here's price kind of, right, bouncing, consolidating on top of the SMA. And then we do actually get 3 bars up, right? We do get 3 bars up. And on the second up bar, right, we get a long output. And then on the third up bar, we also get a long output here, right? So let's see here. We can, right, so that's kind of one way we could do this. It's just use a simple bar direction and say, you know what, I want at least 2 up bars, or maybe you want at least 3 up bars in a row, right? Now, this is the most conservative approach here, because in this case, we need 3 consecutive up bars, right? But what happens if you want to allow for maybe a down bar in the middle, right? Because, right, identifying price patterns is, right, it's definitely one of the most difficult things here to figure out, right? And that's why there's not that many price pattern indicators out there in the wild, because it's an extremely subjective thing to identify, and subjectivity in an indicator is also extremely hard to code up as well. So kind of getting back to that, what if you want to be a little more liberal with your price movement up, right? Maybe you want to, it's acceptable to have 1 down bar in the middle. So as price is moving up, right, we can see price moved up a little bit, then we had a down bar, and then price moved up again, right? So if you want to allow, for maybe 1 down bar as price is moving up, then there's another way we can do this here. So let's see here. Here, let me finish setting up this bar direction. So there we go. So I'm going to leave this as a 2-bar direction there. All right. And yeah, I'll just put that there. And I'm going to grab another bar direction, and I'm going to couple it with a signal counter. So the signal counter allows for that variability of there being a down bar in the middle of while price is moving up here. So I got those connected together. Let's connect that up. Now, so this time, let's say we want at least 3 up bars, 3 bars in the same direction. But since we're going to allow for a down bar, well, we're going to add an extra look back period. So 3 bars out of 4 need to be in the same direction. All right. And let's see here. Oh, and also for the signal counter, remember you got to turn the outputs on here. So value if counted. So we're going to use the value if counted here, like so. There. So turn that on. And now, let's see here. Let's say we want 5. We need 5 bars in the same direction, but we want to allow at least 1 down bar. So we'll increase our look back period. We'll add 1 to that. And there we go. So here's our first up bar, our second one. Actually, it's going to zoom in here a little bit. So there's bar number 1, bar number 2, bar number 3, right? Bar number 4, bar number 5, right? So here's our 5 up bars there, right? 5 up bars, and it allows 1 down bar in the middle there. Right? Now, of course, if we did this with a bar direction, right? Let's set our bar direction to 5 bars in a row, like so. Yeah, even this move up does not have 5 up bars in a row. So yeah, even over here, we didn't get any results. Yeah, even here, right? Yeah, again, we're in the overnight session, so we have a ton of dojis that we're having to deal with, but yeah, but you kind of get the point there. Right. Let me put that down, and let's see here. So I'm going to knock this down to 3, and then I'll knock down the look back period down to 4. All right, so this will be 3 of 4 signals. Actually, I'll just call it 3 of 4 bars. Yeah, something like that. All right, so now the last step is we need to connect all of these components together here. Right. So our first condition, right, is our crossover, right? So this needs to be extended forward here until we actually get the bounce, right? So let's see here. We're going to need a signal extender. Actually, no, you know what? I could use a signal extender, or I could use this look back period. That's actually built into the crossover solver here. So, and the look back period actually has some advantages here. Let me put it to 10. And so we can see it takes this long cross up and extends it forward 10 bars. Right. So, and the advantage here is, for example, right? So we have a cross up, and then we have a cross down, right? So the long output turns off, and now the short output turns on. But then it crosses up again. So now we have a long output as long as the closing price stays above, right, our SMA. But then when it crosses down, right, it switches back to a short output here, right, because it crossed down. So the advantage here is, when we get a cross up, we want to make sure that the price stays above. So if price crosses back down, then this long output disappears, right? So that kind of has an advantage there to it. There. And let's see here. So I think, I don't know. Maybe let's go 12. I'm not sure. Again, this is a subjective nature here to figure out how many bars is necessary to get to the point here where you have, right, that clearance, right, where you have this clearance here. So we need to take our cross-up signal, extend it forward until it gets to our clearance here. So next, I'm going to add a AND node there. And there we have it. So there is our cross up, and our cross up and our clearance. So now we need to get this extended forward until price retraces for that possible bounce, right? So, and let's see here. All right, so this time we definitely will need a signal extender here. Right. And, make sure you connect it into the right connection point there. You can see I connected it into the reset by accident. So let's connect that into the input. There we go. Like so. So the signal extender is, the default's 5 bars, and we definitely need more than 5 bars here. Let's see, what are we gonna need? 15 bars maybe? Yeah. Can I put in a 1? No, I can't. Okay. I'll just use the up arrows there. Okay. So 15 was almost enough. Got us to that point there. And there we go. All right. So in this case, we needed 16 bars here. So again, this number you'll have to adjust, right, depending on how long, how large of this price crossover and pullback, how long this might be. Let's see. So I guess just in case, I'll increase this to 20 here and call that good there. All right. And then now we need to connect in, right, our third condition here, right, which is price touching, or not necessarily touching, but within proximity of our support resistance level there. All right. So let's see here. So I need another AND node. let's connect that into the AND node, and then let's connect this in, and we can actually
news event pending
there. There we go. So I'm going to name this OR node here so we kind of know what it's outputting, right? So it's giving us an output when price is near the SMA, and there we have it, right? So we can see, right, all these bars are within 2 ticks of our SMA, right? So that is basically our bounce setup, I guess we could call it, right, or pre-bounce setup, something like that. And let's see, and then next we need to figure out exactly like how much of how much of the bounce away do you want to actually before generating a signal there, right? So the let's see here. So we're going to need another signal extender, right? Because if we look at this right now, the only time we have an output is when price is actually near our SMA, right? So we don't have an output going far enough forward into the future to account for the bars moving away, right? So we do need to extend this a few more bars, and again, that that how far we need to extend this depends on how conservative you are with needing needing price to bounce away, right? Now, if the inflection solver, if the price inflection is good enough, right? It's just going from a down bar to an up bar. If that's good enough, then basically we're done. We can connect that in there, and bingo, done. Although actually, yeah, in this case it's good enough. Probably, there could be situations. Again, let me kind of go back here. Yeah, let's go back here where let me connect in our inflection solver here, and let's focus in on this bar here, right? So yeah, with this bar, right, I think the upper body is more than 2 ticks. Yeah, maybe not. So but just imagine that, right? You only get this one bar, with a long wick, right, that touches your support resistance, and then the bar that actually moves away could be actually too far away. Yeah, it actually could be too far away. And let's see, we do actually have it. No, we don't. Yeah. All right, so we'll just have to talk about this kind of theoretically here, right? So at this point, this output here, we could only have just a single output on this bar. Actually, let's disconnect this, right? There could, from this AND node, in this example, it could be just this one bar that has an output, right? Because only this bar is within our 2 tick range of our SMA, right? And then price quickly moves away, right? So this, so with this inflection solver here, we actually need an output from the AND node. We need an output on this bar that reverses direction, right? So if this bar, again, if the top of the body is too far away, then we're not going to have an output. We're not going to have an output from the AND node, right, on this same bar. So the safer thing to do is at least use a signal extender that extends for at least one bar. All right. And yeah, there we go. Okay. So yeah, let me just kind of, I can actually kind of make something up temporarily here. All right. So yeah, so here's what you could end up with, right? You get a signal on the bar, right, that touches our SMA or our support resistance level. But then on the inflection bar, there is no output. So if I take our inflection solver and connect it in, we get nothing, right? Because remember the inflection output is on the bar here, whereas our bars that touch, disconnect that, there we go. All right, our bar that touch has an output here, but it doesn't have an output on the bar that reverses away, right, or inflects away. So that is why what's the right term here? I don't want to use safer, but more liberal. Using a signal extender is more foolproof. Yeah, using a signal extender makes the system a little more foolproof in that, right, we have an output on the bar that touches, and now we have, right, another output one bar forward on the bar that could reverse away, right? So now we have an output on that bar. So now
news event imminent.
This, connect that in, and there we go. So, right, there's our short signal on the inflection bar, or the bar that reverses away, right? So because of situations like this, it is safer to actually utilize a signal extender and to extend for at least one bar, because remember, the bar that reverses away is always going to be one bar in the future. So, all right, so let's take that, and I'm going to bring this up here now, connect that in. Let's go back here. Yeah, and there we go. So that's one way to look at this, right? Is just get a signal on the first bar that bounces off, right, or basically reverses away, right? So that's the most liberal approach. Get a signal as soon as possible there, and let's kind of clean this up here a little bit. There. Now, let's say we also need, or we actually want, instead of that price reversal, we want two up bars in a row. There we go. All right, there's our signal there. There we go. So actually that works. Yeah, let's see here. Oh, okay. So so I was thinking here that you might have to extend the signals a little bit further. So actually, as the more up bars you require, typically the more you're going to need to extend your signals forward here. Right? So yeah. So let's say if we need, let's go with this 5 or 3 out of 4. 3 bars. Wait, no. Actually, I'm going to change this here. I'm going to make this actually, yeah, I'm going to make this extremely conservative here and go with the 5 out of 6 bars here. There. All right, so now we need 5 up bars out of 6. Right, so now we won't receive a signal until we get to this bar. Right, get that mark there. But let's look at where we're at. Right. So with our signal extender, right, we have an output until this bar. But if we need 5 up bars, well, you know, then that's our 5th up bar. So this long output needs to be extended all the way, you know, forward in time until we get to this 5th bar here. So so our signal extender here needs to be increased, what, to 4 bars? Yeah, needs to be increased to 4 bars there. All right, there we go. And since price can throw a lot of variability at you, right, it's probably a good idea to extend at least 1 bar extra, right? 1 bar beyond that, what you need here, you know, to confirm that price actually is bouncing away there. Yeah, going 1 bar further is what, a little what, safer. Yeah, I guess I'll use the term safer here to make sure that you actually get a signal out of this there. So now if I take this and connect this in there, and there we have it, right? There is our bounce signal, like so. Right. And one last step. So let's say we don't want 2 signals, right? Let's say we only want just 1 signal, right? The first signal, and we don't want a signal on that 2nd bar there, right? So let's clean that up. We clean that up here by using a signal blocker, like so. And we're only going to need to block for, I think, like 3 bars, something like that. We don't need to block for too much there. Something like that. And there we have it. So nice and clean. Good to go. So let's see here. All right, so next step, I'll stick with this more conservative approach here and require the 5 bars, and let's scan through the chart. So now is the point where we need to scan through the chart and see if there's any any signals here that we don't like or that we're missing. And yeah, looky here. So we had a cross price moved away. It pulled back and it bounced off, but right, it only bounced off for a couple of bars, and now it's consolidating again there. And then we finally get our 5 up bars in a row, and we get a signal. So, right, and actually we have this pattern kind of repeating itself over and over, over and over again here. So we actually get price crossing, crossing up like so, right, and then pulls back, and look, we get this 1 bar here, this long wick that gets within our 2 tick range, and then price reverses away, and there we go, and there's our signal. Right. Yeah. So actually, this is actually a good place to revisit the discussion earlier here. Right? So remember, this part of the system here is identifying when price is near. Near. We only have 1 bar that's near, and then this bar here that reverses away. Remember, so if we're just using our inflection solver, like so, right, this bar, right, here's our bar. Let's mark this, right? That's the bar that reverses away, right? But remember, only 1 bar got close enough. So again, just to just to cover this kind of situation again here, right? If I connect in our price inflection, right, we get no signal there, right? Because the price reversal, right, is on this bar, whereas price, being close enough to our SMA, right, we have an output on that bar, and we need to get those 2 outputs on the same bar. Right. So that is why we have this signal extender here, right, for situations like this. Yeah. So let's kind of go back to this signal extender. Disconnect that. Let's connect that in. Connect that in. And there we go. So there is our signal as soon as we get a reversal bar, like so. Yeah. And actually, as we can see, we get a bunch of these. So, and there's actually one kind of consideration here that hasn't been taken into account. So there's actually another component to this that might need to be considered, which is, if we look at our drawing, right, we had price, well below the support resistance level here, right? So we had an established, this little drawing here is illustrating that, we have price well below our support resistance level for some period of time here. So let's add this requirement here to this system here. And what that will do is, where'd my chart go? So what that would do is, right, so here we definitely have price below our SMA for some period of time. So we get the cross up, and then we get the pullback, and then we get the bounce up there, right? But this, right, this crossover, right now, all we're doing is we're just saying, okay, we just need price to cross and then move up and then pull back for that bounce off, and there you go. And here's our signal from that, right? So yeah, so if you want to require price being, having a well established base, above or below your support resistance level for some amount of time there, we can add that in, and that would get rid of this signal here. That would actually eliminate this one here. Yeah, would eliminate that signal there. So yeah, so let's add that into the mix here. Let's see. All right, so if we need price to be on one side of our support resistance level, for X number of bars before it crosses, then we have to go way back to the beginning of our system, right? So yeah, when we started to build this, right, the condition number one was the crossover. But now condition number one is establishing that price is on actually no, it's not the opposite side, but yeah, that establishing that price is on the side of the support resistance level, for X number of bars that we might get the bounce signal for, right? So this is a short bounce signal, so we need price to be below our support resistance level before it crosses up. So let's see here. So establishing that I've been using this other program for so long, I'm kind of getting my mouse clicks, getting my mouse control all mixed up with NinjaTrader. Let's see here. So yeah, so establishing that price is on one side or the other of a support resistance levels is very simple. It's just another comparison solver. Let's see here. Right, so in this situation, we want to make sure that the high price of the bars, although we do kind of have a violation here with the high price of the bars. So I guess maybe let's just make sure that the closing price of the bar, closing price might be a little easier to work with. We'll make sure that the closing price has been on one side or the other of the SMA for a certain length of time here. So input A, we're going to switch that to price. We're going to leave it the closing price, and then input B is going to be our SMA 200. Let's just change the period there, right? Pretty straightforward, right? A short when okay, actually, sorry. We're going to focus on this part of the drawing here. Yeah, so we're going to make sure that price has been on above our support resistance level, the opposite side, for a certain number of bars before it crosses and then continues down there. All right. So we have our comparison solver, right? Just simply tells us what side of our support resistance the closing price is on, And so the next thing here is I could use a look back, or I could use a signal counter. I'm going to use the look back. It's a lot easier to work with. There. So with our look back solver, let's see here. We do need that displacement set to 1. But then our look back, like, I don't know, maybe 20 bars is good enough. And we want price to be on one side of the market for a minimum of 20 bars. And yeah, so look, all this choppiness, right, has been kind of cut out. Right, all this choppiness is cut out. So that means that this signal here will get eliminated because the market has not been on one side of the SMA for a minimum of 20 bars. Right. So once we get this crossover here, now we can see, right, the closing price has been above our SMA for at least 20 bars, right? And here we go. And so this long output denotes the 20th bar that price, the closing price, has been above the SMA, right? And also, remember I said we do need this displacement set to 1 here. And the reason why is because the crossover, right? We need an output on the bar that actually does the crossover. So let's move this over here. So keep an eye on this bar here. Right? So that's our crossover bar. And if I turn our displacement off, right, then we have an output all the way until we get the crossover. So let's take here's our crossover solver. And let's just combine these two together with an AND node. Sorry, there we go, AND node. All right, so there you go. Here's our short output. Closing price is below. And then if we connect our crossover in, right, we get nothing. Because remember, the crossover has a signal on the crossover bar. Let's disconnect it. Right, our output goes all the way up, just before our little red square. But then if we look at the crossover signal here, right, the crossover is actually on the other bar. And it's the other direction as well. So actually, yeah, here, let's fix this. I actually need to fix the output or reverse the output of our comparison solver here. And actually, I can just do that by hitting the swap button there. So on our comparison solver here, we can see I have the swap enabled. You can see the little icon there, right? So there we go. So it's set for short. I can go in here. I can hit swap there, and now it's long. So now the output here from our 20 bar minimum requirement, right, that price is below before it crosses, and our crossover is along. So let's take a look at that. So again, if we connect in our crossover, right, we don't get anything. But if I re-enable this displacement here, if I set it back to 1, right, the output shifts forward until we get to the crossover bar. Connect that in, and there we go. There's our crossover. All right. So, yeah, let's see here. Okay, so we're going to connect that in, disconnect that. Now we're going to make, quite a significant change here, or at least a moderate change here. So when we incorporate, price being on one side of our support resistance level for at least 20 bars, then we can see, right, we only have a single output on that crossover bar, right? And remember that previously, the way we set our crossover solver up, remember we had the look back set to 12. So that crossover signal was extended forward in time to give the market enough time to make that clearance, right? To pull away from the support resistance level for that clearance. Well, we no longer have that 12 bar extension anymore. So now we need to add another signal extender. There we go. So we can just connect that in, connect our signal extender in, and set it to 12. There. All right, so let's see what signals we have. Yeah, so we have the cross up. We do get our little clearance. And then right now, what did I do? I connected in the 2 bar bounce requirement, right? So yeah, so we can see on our signals here, let's get rid of that, right? Here's the first up bar and the second up bar, right? First up bar, second up bar. There we go. And oh, look at that. We have a signal way out here in the middle of nowhere, right? So why do we have that signal there? Yeah, let's mark that guy. And the reason why we have that signal there is our signal extender. Yeah. So let's see, what is this set to? Set to 5. Yeah, so it's set to 5. And let's see here. Yeah, so it looks like this bar is probably within that 2-tick range, right? So then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so that's why. So all we need to do here is go back to our signal blocker and let's increase that to 5. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Yeah. So there you go. Increase that to 5. And now we got rid of that extra signal there. Okay. So as you can see, depending on exactly what kind of requirements you have, right, your signal extender, you'll need a different number of, bars that you need to extend, right, certain elements of your system, right, or certain outputs of your system, depending on exactly how you want to approach this. So I think we're approaching the end of this. Yeah. All right, let's continue kind of working through verifying this here on the chart here. So we definitely don't have any nice kind of clean bounces here. Actually, Yeah, I'm going to add something here that's going to help me kind of, or yeah, help me with a heads up here. So let me explain. Let's see. Yeah. So what will help me, or sorry, yeah, what will give me a heads up, that we could be, that a bounce for this pattern here could occur, is looking for the crossovers, right? Looking for these crossovers. And so if I had some kind of a output here or notification that a crossover occurred, right, then I could be prepared to then give me a heads up that look for this, look in this area for that bounce pattern afterwards. So to give me that heads up, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add an OR node, connect this into the OR node, and this OR node, I'm going to go to the options tab, and I'm going to reduce the output down to like 0.3, something like that, 0.3. And so if we look at the chart, right, there we go. I have that little green tiny output, a little red tiny output there. And actually I'm going to set it to 0.4 there. Make it a little easier to see. And then I need another OR node. So I can connect this to the OR node, connect the OR node to the result node, and then connect my signals to the OR node, like so. So now, as I'm kind of scanning through the chart, I can see all these little outputs here. Yeah, so here we go. So here's our little output as price crossed above the SMA, and there we go. So there's two signals there. Oh, look at that. All right. So, yeah, we got a cross down. Yeah, there we go. Oh, yeah, we actually killed this signal because, look, the market crossed up, crossed down, crossed up. It just did too many crosses, and that requiring the market, actually, yeah, we required the market here to be on one side of our support resistance level for 20 bars. And yeah, we didn't get that here. So we actually killed that signal there. Right? So there's always, pros and cons to, putting these requirements in there. So I'm kind of surprised. This actually doesn't look like the market's been above the SMA for 20 bars. Yeah, so let's see what's going on here. All right, so let's get BloodHound open. So we're going to start debugging this system to figure out why do we have a signal here. Let's see. So oh, okay. So here we go. So here's our 20 bar requirement. There we go. Market's been below. It crossed up. All right, so there's our minimum clearance right there. There we go. We'll name that AND node. Right? It's always good to kind of name your AND nodes if you can, find a name for it, so we know what we're looking at. And okay, there we go. So yeah, price comes back, and it's obviously near the SMA, but it actually crossed down. Yeah, so again, this is pretty darn subjective here, but to me, this doesn't look like that pattern at all, because we actually have an entire bar on the wrong side of the SMA. Yeah, so let's account for an entire bar being on the wrong side of the SMA. And if it is, that will nullify the system, right? So let's see here. So let's identify. Where'd it go? There we go. Let's identify these two bars on the wrong side of the SMA, right? And that will kill this signal over here. Right? Let's see, where should we do that? Let's work down here. All right, so let's add a comparison solver. And let's see. I'm trying to think of a name for this. I guess that name's good enough. All right, now let's go back to the Properties tab here. And so the way that we know a bar is on the wrong side, right, is the high price is going to be below our SMA. Or if it's the reverse situation, right, the low price is going to be above the SMA. And let's see here. So, all right, so we want input A to be price, and input B is going to be our SMA 200 again. There. So we're going to produce an output that's going to cancel the system from generating a signal, right? Now, so let's kind of go back to, let's go back to, what are we seeing here? Right? Okay. So our issue is we have a long signal right there. So we have an unwanted long signal there. So to cancel this long signal, for me personally, it's more intuitive if I generate a short output to cancel a long signal, right? So I'm going to generate an output in the opposite direction of our signal, right? So I'm going to generate a short here. All right. So let's move this back, connect that up. There. All right. So a short output when the high price is below the SMA. All right. So for a short output, I'm going to look at the high price, and then it's going to be the opposite for a long output. So we'll set this to the low price. There we go. And oh, look at that. There we go. So I didn't have to go into the rules window. So the rules window is already set up for me. The default was already set up. So there we go. So we have a short output here to cancel this long signal. Yeah. So now, where do we plug this into? Right? And yeah, so I'm going to cancel our signal extender. Or actually, no, I think, yeah, I need to cancel one of these signal extenders. It's which one do I need to cancel for? And there. So actually, I think, yeah, I think this signal extender would be the better one here. So let's connect that in. Right? So this signal extender, right? So we get our clearance output, right? Or our clearance signal. Yeah, so there we go. So price makes that minimum clearance to the SMA. And then we extend, right, that clearance signal forward until price comes back to touch the SMA. Right? But if price actually punches through, or yeah, the whole bar punches through the SMA, then we want to cancel, yeah, this signal extender here. So let's connect that in, and that did it. So it's all we had to do is connect that in, because again, let me select our signal extender there. Yeah. So the reason why just connecting this into the reset connector, right? So you can see I connected it into the reset, is on our signal extender here, our resets, right? The default oh, actually, no, that was wrong. Yeah, it looked like it did what we wanted, but not really. We want reset opposite signal. There we go. Yeah, there we go. That's correct. Right, so we have our clearance. We're extending our clearance, extending, right, until we get price near the SMA. But if the whole bar goes the opposite direction, or yeah, the whole bar goes onto the wrong side of the SMA, now our signal extender dies, right? It turns off. So yeah. So now let's go back to this. There. So now our long signal has been cleared out. All right. So let's continue looking through the chart and seeing if there's any other issues here. Let's see here. Yep, cross up and we get a bounce. And we have another bounce. Yeah, this second signal here does not look correct. All right, so let's debug this. All right, let's kind of take a step back here. And let's go back to our 20 bar extension. Yeah. All right, so the bars get close enough, right, to our SMA for that bounce, right? So if we want this to look like a nice clean pattern, when price gets within proximity here, that needs to also Yeah, that needs to also, I guess, yeah, turn off this 20 bar extension. Yeah, this 20 bar extension, you know, as we're finding out, is becoming kind of problematic here. But, you know, sometimes you need 20 bars, you know, again, or maybe not. You know, again, this all goes back to that subjective nature as to, you know, what exactly do you want to allow, you know, this crossover, right, and this movement away before it pulls back. You know, how, you know, does this need to be a nice, quick movement away before it pulls back, or, you know, do you want to allow for these larger movements away and then pullbacks, right? Yeah. So this 20 bar extension, you know, is a more liberal approach there, you know, allowing for giving the market more time to move away further before it pulls back here. But when it does pull back, we can see we do need to turn this off, right? So that we don't get signals further down the road here. So, so let's see, what can we do here? Right. Yeah, so I'm thinking we can use this logic here, right, which is detecting when price is near the SMA. Right, we can use that to turn off our 20 bar signal extension, right? So yeah, once price gets within range here, yeah, we should turn off the signal extender. Yeah, so let's do this. So I'm going to use a look back node, connect it in here, and what I'm going to use here is the displacement. So I'm going to set this to a 2 bar displacement, just in case. So normally when you're using some component of your system to reset a signal extender, right, or sometimes you might even reset, you know, a signal blocker here, and using a look back node, right, taking some detection, right, some part of your system that's identifying something, right, and you're using it as a reset, right, you're almost always going to use a look back with a displacement of 1. Normally all you need is 1 here, but I'm going to go 2 here, and let's take a look at these, right? So let's mark this, right? So these 2 bars, right, have an output, and then these 4 bars, right, have an output. Now, if we look at the displacement here, right, you can see the signals have been shifted forward in time. So now these are the signals or the outputs that will disable the signal extender, right? These are the ones that will reset our signal extender, right? So we're going to reset our signal extender, right, further down or further forward in time, right? We don't want to reset, right? We don't want this signal extender turning off right here. You know, we want it turning off a few bars later, right? Now we already have a reset connected in here, and remember this reset, right, we're using a short output here to reset our signal extender. So this output here, coming from our look back node, this output also needs to be a short output as well. Right. So what I'm going to do is just hit the swap button, and bingo, now we have short outputs. I can pull this back here, right? So now we need to connect both of these nodes into the reset, but obviously there's only one connection point. So what we'll need to do is grab an OR node. So it can be either this node or this node can do the resetting. So there we go. Yeah. So let's connect that in, and there we have it. All right, so here, so we have our clearance, price pulls back, and price gets within, right, that 2-tick range, and then it turns off. So now the next thing to verify is, do we actually still have an output here? And yeah, there we go. So we have a 2-bar output here, right? 2-bar output that gets fed into this signal extender, like so. And let me turn off the snapping. There we go. So now let's take a look at this point. So there we go. So remember, this AND node, we labeled it the pre-bounce, right? So yeah, price gets near our SMA for that pre-bounce setup there, and then we're extending, right, that pre-bounce signal forward in time for, you know, depending on how much of a bounce we actually want to require, right? And let's see here. So let's see if we actually get, oops, come on. Yeah, there we go. And let's see, this time, actually, we didn't get a signal. Yeah, and that's because we just have a bunch of choppiness, right? Up bar, down bar, up bar, down bar, up bar, down bar, up bar, up bar. So it took quite a while before we actually got the 2 up bars. You know, so again, you know, depending on what you want to require, you know, so I had the 2-bar requirement, right? The 2 up bar requirement. If I just put the price inflection in there, bingo, there we go. We get signals now with the easiest, right? The easiest requirement, right? The most liberal requirement there. But if we go with the 2-bar requirement, right, then our signal extender has to be adjusted here. Let's see, 6 bars. Okay, so I had to adjust it to 6 bars there. Yeah, so I'll leave it at 6 bars. So, and then also our, let's see, our signal blocker. Actually, yeah, I think that can stay at 5. Yeah. All right, let's connect this to the end here. And there. All right. Yeah, I don't remember where that extra signal was, but yeah, it was further down the road. But now we're just left with one signal there. All right. So let's continue our debugging session here. So here we go. All right, that looks nice and clean. And Yeah, let's stop for a moment and kind of discuss this, because look, we did actually have a bar, a whole bar on the opposite side of the SMA, and we still have a signal here, right? Which can happen. Yeah, and then we got to bounce away here. So if we look at this, right? Let's see here. So my gut instinct here is telling me that while this did work, right? So we can see our signal extender turned off here when price was within range of the SMA, right? So actually, if we look at this ant node here, right, there we go. We do actually have a price near our support resistance here, right? So we do actually have an output that we can then extend forward in time to wait for price to move away, like so. All right, so that did actually work. However, my instinct is to tell me that maybe resetting our signal extender on that bar may not, in some cases, may not be good. May not be good. It might kill a signal that you may want, right? So what I'm going to do, just in case, just to kind of go with my gut instincts here, I'm going to push this back a little further, disconnect that, and I'm going to grab this this look back node here and copy it, and then let's paste it right here. There we go. And but this time I only want a 1 bar displacement. Here, come on, go down. There we go. There we go. A 1 bar displacement, and then connect that into the reset there, like so. I'm not actually, yeah, let's see, our signal extender is now, yeah, resetting right there. Let's see. Yeah. All right, let me refresh the chart here. And oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah. So that was my issue. So I copied. All right, these are getting a little too close together. There we go. So I copied this look back node, and it was swapped. So I didn't want to reverse our signals again. So that was the mistake I made here. Is I reversed, right? This look back is reversing everything again. So turn that swap off. There we go. So now I'm not seeing any long outputs here. There we go. That was the mistake. There. Okay. Yeah. So now our signal extender, right, doesn't actually reset on just that single bar that actually is on the wrong side of the market there. So, all right, let's kind of, so now we need to go back and make sure that my instincts were correct here. So yeah, let's go back on the chart there, and hopefully I can find it. Yeah, it was this point right here. Yeah, I should mark that. Yeah, so it was somewhere in here. Yeah, we had two long signals here. Yeah. So I think that was the issue. And actually, I think we could have had the same issue here as well. Let's take a look. So let's go zoom in here and let's disconnect this. There. Oh. No, actually we don't. Okay, that's surprising. Yeah, okay, there's that signal that we did get rid of there. So we fixed that one. And, oh, good. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we did have an erroneous long signal there as well. And let's see here. Connect that. Oh, okay. So there we go. We just didn't have the clearance. We didn't have 3 points of clearance. Yeah, so if you ever kind of wonder, why you're not seeing a signal, it's just a matter of taking each element there and taking each element and taking a look at it. So right now I have the the price with 3 points of clearance from the SMA. I have that connected into the result nodes, so I can actually check, did we have 3 points of clearance? And I can see there's no long output here, but over here, here we had actually 3 points of clearance here, over here we had 3 points of clearance to the short side, but not there. Okay, so that is why we didn't actually get a signal there. Yeah. All right, so again, back to this here was still fixed, getting rid of that extra long signal there. But I do need to go back and reconnect this into the reset. And there we go. Long signal disappeared. There. All right, that's where we were earlier. So looks good there. Let's see, we got a cross down, and we did get a bounce off of that. Let's see what happened here. Yeah, look at that. A single bar pullback, and then a very quick bounce off of that. So let's see what's going on there. Okay, so here, here's our cross down. And let's see if we got that clearance. Yep, there's our clearance. And now our signal extension. There we go. So this pullback took more than, what is it, 20 bars. Yeah, so our signal extender is set for 20 bars. So it took more than 20 bars there. So again, this is all subjective. We can increase this to a few more. And how many bars did it actually take? 28. Let's go 30. Okay, 30 bars. There. And there is our short signal. Yeah. And again, remember guys, just to reiterate, I have the 2-bar bounce requirement there, right? So we need at least 2 bars bouncing away. So, all right. So now that we extended, right, this pullback period to being at least 30 bars, well, we now should, I'm going to mark that. Yeah, we should now kind of go back through the chart and see if we introduced any problems. All right, so we know that's good. Let's see, that one's still good. And that one is still eliminated. So good. Oh, actually, yeah, that's right. This was our problem here earlier. Yeah. There, I'll just mark that. This is a good illustration here of, the subjectivity of price, trying to find price patterns here. So obviously we got a cross down, cross up, and a cross down, and then we finally get, right, this pullback and bounce there. So the problem is we had too many crossovers before we actually got that pullback. And we didn't get the clearance. Yeah, there's only like a point. Yeah, that's only 1 point of clearance. So 2 problems there. Yeah. So, but if you wanted to allow for something like this, right, where you might get multiple crossovers before the market pulls away, right, and then pulls back, if we wanted to allow for that, then again, remember, this extra requirement here, right, where we need 20 bars of the market to be on one side before it crosses. So this, right, this requirement here eliminated this crisscrossing to generate a signal, right? So that extra crisscrossing, was is prevented or no longer allowed because of this extra requirement that we did earlier on. So, once again, we had a triple crossover, so this was filtered out. Yeah, I guess that's okay. And what do we have here? Yeah, all right. Our crossover, pull back, and bounce. Okay. Yeah. All right, that's where we were before. Yeah, we're definitely not going to get any signals with all this chopping around on that support resistance level. And that's it. All right, that's all I've got. Let's see, I think I have 5 days. Yeah, 5 days. All right. Yeah, I think we've covered enough here. All right, well, gentlemen, let's see. Wow, we are at the 2.5 hour mark, just all on one question. But yeah, these kind of trying to identify price patterns is a very tricky and very subjective thing to do there. Like I said earlier, that's the reason why you don't see hardly any market pattern type of indicators, because they are just so subjective and so tricky to figure out. But there we go. That's where we'll leave it for now. And any other, anything else about any other discussions on this really will just boil down to exact details of what you would consider meeting this pattern or violating this pattern, right? At this point, I think I've covered everything, all the major components and how they might be adjusted. And the rest is just kind of coming down to the exact details of the individual trader deciding, what violates this pattern and what's allowed in this pattern. And then it's just a matter of tweaking, each component in here. Right. So I guess, last thing I'll cover is, what should we call this? There. Yeah, I guess I'll just call this AND node the crossover condition there. Right. So yeah, you have the crossover condition, right? And we have a pre-filtering of that crossover, right? That pre-filtering is, right, requiring the market to be on one side of the SR line for a minimum of X number of bars before it crosses over. So that way this eliminates a bunch of crisscrossing, before getting to the red line there, right? So, all right, so that's kind of condition number 1. And then condition number 2, right? Condition number 2, here's the clearance, right? So this guy here is making sure that we have a minimum clearance, right? So we have this basically a minimum of this clearance here. So that way price is not just kind of consolidating on top of the support resistance line, right? Before the system gets tricked into a bounce off, right? So obviously you need a minimum distance before you can actually have a pullback, and a bounce, right? So we got the minimum clearance, and then we basically have the pre-bounce or price, being near your support resistance level, right? So these guys are identifying where price is near it, which really is kind of what this AND node is. This AND node, as well as identifying when price is near the support resistance level, but I didn't want two nodes to be named the same, so I kind of gave them a different name there, right? So this AND node here is the next condition, right, which is the circle, right? Price pulling back close enough or near enough to the support resistance line there. And then the last AND node here, I guess we could call this there. So that's the bounce off of the SMA 200. And yep, that's the last requirement, right? Is to making sure that price actually did, reverse directions off of that price actually did make a move away from or a bounce off of the support resistance line there. All right, yeah. So those are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 requirements for that pattern, at least for what I see.